you can't represent the people if you're not willing to be involved and to get up there and talk about issues that are important. And either as a candidate or as a resident talking to your council, it's important to raise your voice. And that's something we can all do. You can always call your council member or elected official. You don't have to run for office to make change.
What do you got for me? Yeah, what do you got for me? Baby, would you stand and fight?
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Speakeasy Conversations. My special guest today is David Varnam. He's the candidate for lieutenant governor, and as you can see, I'm a big fan. We've been friends for a couple of years. First off, David, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming out to our Cooley Conservatives Lager game. That was a lot of fun having you and the family out there.
Yeah, it was a great event. My family's been coming with me for years. I went the first year when I was a candidate in 22 by myself. And ever since then, both my kids have wanted to go. And this year, one was out of town, but my wife came with my youngest. We had a great time. And it's always a good event. And I encourage people to sign up for next year's because you won't be sorry.
Yeah, we have been to, actually, by my math, this last one was the 9th annual. So
Wow.
next year we'll be celebrating a full decade of doing these things, and I'm looking forward to that. We're going to have a lot of fun. But yeah, again, thank you. It was really a blessing to have you and the whole family there. And I should probably mention too, the format that I typically go with on these things is just a meet and greet kind of thing. There's no speeches, there's no formal kind of things. Just come and have a good time at the ballpark. So it was really fun having you there.
And there were other candidates there, but like Congressman Van Orden was there. And, he was just sitting at a chair at a table watching the game and, talking to people. And that's what I was doing too. I was moving around from table to table, just kind of introducing, I knew most people, but introducing myself to people I didn't know. But you're basically just hanging out at a ball game. And because there's a suite, because it's this big area that is just us, what's great about it is you don't have to worry about people around you being like, hey, stop talking politics. You're just watching the game, eating food, talking politics, and having a good old time. And there's people that I met there years ago that I enjoy sitting and talking with that reference conversations from years ago. And so that's what's fun about it is it's people that you see at this game sometimes only once a year.
Yeah. Yeah. And well said. Another thing, I talk about it all the time with especially around the idea that I started up a few weeks ago, what I call the Victory Squad. People can get signed up to get notifications about different campaign events that are going on throughout this election cycle. And one of the things I've been trying to really try to drive home is this idea of building these types of relationships and showing up at these kinds of events. You really make some great friends and build some really cool relationships. David, you and we've become really good friends over the years because of events like that. So it's really a blessing to get together with people and just talk about stuff that we all are passionate about.
It's fun to see people that are in the fight and to talk to other people that maybe you haven't met before. But also just being able to, from a candidate perspective, being able to just sit and watch a game and casually talk with people is great. If you're a resident, how great it is. And this isn't a pat on my back, but you had a member of Congress there. You had a lieutenant governor candidate there. You had assembly candidates there. You had sheriff candidate there. And be able to talk to these people while watching a game, while eating food that's included in your ticket. How great that is, just if you're an average person, to be able to have those conversations that you normally wouldn't be able to have with these elected officials and candidates.
Yeah, right on. Well, and speaking of having conversations with people, you have been all over the state campaigning for lieutenant governor. Let's dive in deep here for a second. What was it like campaigning last week in this crazy heat?
It was hot. And the thing was, unfortunately, this is the time of the year where it's parades and fairs. And especially at the fairs, their numbers were way down. And I do feel bad for those organizers, those people that put so much time and effort into the fairs and then have the heat and the smoke and people stay away.
Oh, the smoke.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I was at the La Crosse Interstate Fair, and it was so hot and there was hardly anybody walking around. And it was in a metal building, and it was really hot there. Everybody had the fans going, and I just felt bad for the organizers because it hurts your attendance. And so there was definitely a lot less people at most of these fairs than there are most years. But still, fairs are still a great place to go and talk to people. because you can go to Republican events and you can talk to people that go to Republican Party events, but at the end of the day, it's good to get out there, go to fairs, parades, festivals, and other things, and talk to the average person and see what they're
Mhm.
thinking,
Yep.
and to meet people that you've never met before. And let's be honest, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of people that are going to vote in the Republican primary, and most of them have never gone to a Republican Party event this year. And so I think it's important not only to do Republican Party events, but to also go to fairs, festivals, chicken feeds, all that good stuff, and talk to people.
Yeah, that is well said, and I think it is important for people to understand that the way was it Rush Limbaugh, I think, used to talk about preaching to the choir or what was the other term he had? Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I
Oh,
do,
I
but I
can't
can't remember the
remember what
phrase either.
yeah,
Sorry.
it was another funny way that he would put it. But it's the idea that I mean, you go to a Republican event, you're speaking to the choir, but when you go out to these fairs, you never know what you're gonna get. I put in a shift at the GOP booth on Friday night, and it was interesting. I mean, there was actually quite a bit of traffic on Friday, so it wasn't quite as hot, but that smoke that's in the air from all those wildfires, that's the hard part. But yeah, the little conversations that you have with a lot of people, and what is really fun is especially like when I ran into a couple of young people who didn't even know they agreed with us until we started talking about where we stand on issues and where they think about issues, and they kind of walked away like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I don't know if they're going to vote for our side, but it was a really fun conversation to educate them about what we really believe and not what people read in the paper.
And I was at the Marquette County Fair on Saturday, and somebody was kind of walking by. They kind of looked over, and I said, "Hi, I'm a Republican candidate for lieutenant governor." And they stopped right in their tracks, and they turned, and they said, "Really?" And we talked for a few minutes, and then I noticed that they went down and talked to the Democratic booth, and we're talking with them for a few minutes. I don't know if Democrat, Independent, Republican. I don't know, but he stopped to talk. I think it's a good opportunity to kind of put yourself out there. And most people at some of these county fairs, like Marquette, which is one of the top 10 smallest counties in our state, they're probably not used to having a statewide candidate standing at a booth talking to people. And he stopped to talk to me for a few minutes. And so I just think it's important to get out there and talk to these people. I always like to say, large or small, I visit communities of all sizes because I'm a former rural mayor. I know what it's like to be forgotten, but that also means
Mm.
we also need to be talking to the large communities as well. It's a balance. And we need to understand that if we're elected to a statewide office, we're representing everyone. And so traveling to the small fairs, the large fairs, I was at the Waukesha Fair last week on Friday, and then I'm in Marquette the very next day, one of our smallest counties, talking to them. It's what you do as a candidate, and it's what you should do as an elected official.
Yeah, right on. Well, and like we were saying, you were telling me off air that you're going to be going to a city council meeting in Lancaster as well. I mean,
Yeah.
the servant attitude that you have, God bless you, man.
This is it's my one night at home from now until the primary. And I thought, I was going to do the podcast with you. I've been doing some fundraising things and some other campaign stuff today. Uh, but I thought I'll be able to have dinner and be at home. And then there was a council issue. And the Chamber of Commerce and some others were asking if I was available, if I would attend. And so I am. But it is what it is. You can't represent the people if you're not willing to be involved and to get up there and talk about issues that are important. And either as a candidate or as a resident talking to your council, it's important to raise your voice. And that's something we can all do. You can always call your council member or elected official. You don't have to run for office to make change.
That is a really good point. You know, something that I've talked to Congressman Van Orden about in the years that I've been observing and helping out in politics, I've come to the conclusion that there are three types of people who end up getting involved in politics, whether it's at the volunteer level or running for office. There are what I term predators, prey, and protectors. The protectors are the ones, like you're saying, you're the one going out there and making your voice heard. You're out there protecting the taxpayers, protecting the residents. The prey are almost always the taxpayers because the predators are always coming for more, coming for more. And I had a wonderful conversation with somebody just the other day when I was working doors on behalf of Tom Tiffany, and we talked about property taxes. And he was, I mean, you talk about prey. He felt like he was getting annihilated by these property taxes. What are some of the things that you've got? I know you've been talking about this quite frequently as well. What are some of the ideas you have to take into Madison and start fixing this?
Well, just as you're kind of hinting at, we need to do a better job of being bold on taxes. We need to lower our taxes in our state. And one thing I always talk about is the fact that when I left being mayor of Lancaster after 6 years, 3 terms, we had the lowest property taxes and lowest utility fees of any city in Grant County. That's important. And it
That's a
matters because,
big deal.
yeah, because you get a lot of people on both sides, let's be honest, that run for office, especially on the local level, say they're a fiscal conservative. They get in there and you're like, what happened?
Mhm.
Why are you voting on all these tax increases? It's really hard to stick to your guns. And I was able to do that as mayor and was able to achieve a goal to keep our taxes low when I left. And I think that's very important. As you've heard me say many times, I think we need to stand for the sanctity of life. And I'm proud to be endorsed by Wisconsin Family Action and Pro-Life Wisconsin PACs. To be clear, the Wisconsin Family Action PAC and Pro-Life Wisconsin PAC. I appreciate them standing with me in this. And then we also need to make sure that we are keeping men out of women's sports and their locker rooms. I'm a girl dad, and I've been saying that for months. You've heard me talk about it. One of the
Right
things I
on.
think is really cool is Tom Tiffany is also a girl dad. And I really love the contrast that we could have with 2 rural girl dads that have been elected officials on the local level in Madison fighting against the crazy. Because let's be honest, we see what's happening in the Democratic primary right now, and it's going to
Mm.
be the big city liberal ticket. And I really like the contrast that we could have with that. But as I've said to you before in our conversations, the other thing about my background that's kind of interesting, not only did I work for Dr. Dobson at Focus on the Family as his federal policy analyst, but I was also a congressional aide for housing, water, and transportation issues to a member of Congress from suburban Southern California, suburban LA. And it, so I
Quite
have,
a contrast
yeah,
there.
I have quite the knowledge base of things. Big city, little city, rural, urban. I have been on those issues for many decades. And I think that type of background makes me not only unique, but would help me in Madison to work with Tom Tiffany to get things done for our taxpayers and our residents.
That is really well said. And I mean, that kind of experience too goes a long way. But as you mentioned, I mean, the other side, their primary, it is a circus. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
how else to put it.
Yeah.
What was it? I was talking about it on the weekly podcast yesterday. This whole idea that Crowley, he gets out of the race, endorses Rodriguez. Rodriguez could potentially be in criminal problems right now because of the finance report issues that are going on there. She gets out of the race, and now Crowley's back in. Well, the way I put it on the podcast, what does that say about his judgment when he endorsed her? And now he's back in, and we're all supposed to just forget that?
And let's be honest, he was at like 5% in the polls. This isn't somebody that was leading the race and decided
Right.
to do this. The Democrats are trying to fix this race. The Democrats are trying to influence it. And for a party that's always out there talking about democracy and, let the people decide, that's not what's happening here within their party and their party leadership. They don't want the people to decide because the people, it looks like on the left, are going to select somebody that maybe some of that inter-party leadership doesn't want at the top of their ticket. So they're trying to stop that. And
Yeah.
it's just wrong.
It's the way I put it, and you can agree or disagree with me. I don't expect you to agree with me, but the way I put it, it's not even a political party anymore. It's more akin to an organized crime syndicate. The way they are organizing to rig their own primary election. It's not like they're rigging our election; they're rigging their own primary election. I it's like Evers is a mafia boss just putting out orders, and they're all
Well, and let's
supposed to
be
just
honest,
follow them.
the last major partisan election we had, in this state when the Democrats and the Republicans went to the polls was the 2024 presidential election, where you had Harris on the ballot that nobody here voted to put on
That's
the
right.
ballot when they voted in the primary earlier in 2024.
That is a
So,
great point. It is becoming a trend with them. And I mean, I said it on the podcast the other day too. This idea that unfortunately the JFK types of Democrats are long gone. The only ones left are these just lunatics.
well, we live on the western side of the state, you and I, where we've seen that change, where we've seen these
Yeah.
rural conservative Democrats that realize that the party has left them, and now they're voting for the Republican Party. They're voting conservative because it represents their values, and that's what Donald Trump has been able to really tap into on the western side of the state. That's why we see it's the western side of the state where the fastest growth has been for the Republican Party. And that's why I think that we need to have someone like me on the ticket with Tom Tiffany, because
Yes.
I will help us in the western side of the state, coming from this group that has been showing up for Trump, but it hasn't always turned out at the same numbers in the off year elections. And we need to make sure that we reelect Derek Van Orden. We need to make sure that we elect our ticket. And I think it helps to have someone from the western side. And I would say this too: I'm out of the 5 offices for statewide office on the Republican side, I am the only one from Western Wisconsin. For any of the 5 offices, I am the only candidate. And so I think that's important too, that we need to have a ticket that represents our state with people from different parts of our state.
No, that is a great point. I'm glad you said it too, because another thing that I will add to that is not only the Western Wisconsin values that you have, but just the common sense and the decency. You know, we're really missing that in politics these days. And I think you and Tom Tiffany as well, there's just common sense and decency. We can bring that back into Madison again. It will take time because culture shifts like that take time. But I mean, you and Tom will be a great start to getting common sense back in Madison.
And when I was mayor of Lancaster, it's important to point out Lancaster at the time was very purple. And at the time I was elected, we had been voting, not only the city, but the county had been voting for the Democratic nominee for president since the 80s. And that has shifted here. But I understood that I was leading a purple city, but I held to my guns when it came to the conservative values. Like I said,
Yeah.
I was able to keep our taxes low. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't having these conversations with people and talking about how it benefits our community and them to be doing these things. And I think that's important.
Yeah, that is important, and it reminds me too, another thing that's going on here in La Crosse County, and I actually just submitted a letter to the editor, to the Tribune about it, is the SMRT, and one of it's not just this SMRT bus system, that's not what bothers me. What bothers me is the mindset of our leaders in La Crosse County. They have this mindset that everything, the solution to everything is government. And that's just not the case. It's just again, coming back to the idea of just getting some common sense in there. It Everything we do doesn't have to go through the government. You know, if
Mhm.
somebody needs a ride from Toma to Gunderson and La Crosse, they could just rely on their church or their neighbor or their friends and their family. You don't need government for everything. And I think Ronald Reagan, he tried to teach us this a long time ago when he said, the government is not the solution to your problems. The government is the problem. Or am I wrong about that?
Well, and I would say this too. There's another part of the liberal mindset that doesn't want cars and those types of vehicles out there. They want everything to be shared rides. And I'm reminded, I spoke at a college class one time at UW Platteville, and they brought in another elected official from another community. And they were kind of making the case of, well, yeah, parking is bad in my community, but we kind of want it that way because we want people to want to live really close to where they need to go and ride bikes. And if parking is hard to find, it forces people to want to ride bikes. And
Mm,
that is the mindset. And we need to be aware of that too, that they're trying to kind of push you away from having vehicles. You know, the Green New Deal and everything else is part of this. They're
yeah.
trying to make things harder so that you want to find another mode of transportation and pay the government to get from point A to point B.
So they're like creating the problem so that they can go with the solution in the government. I mean, that makes sense. I can totally understand them being that kind of diabolical about it. But again, it just boggles my mind how when there's a problem that exists in the community, the only thing they'll ever talk about is a government solution. And
Mhm.
it really bothers me that people fall for that when there is a liberty solution there as well, but no one ever talks about that.
Yep.
Yeah, it's something that we're gonna have to keep working on and again, like I said, I mean, these are kinds of the cultural shifts that are gonna take a long time to start getting people educated about these types of things, which is one of the reasons why I started the podcast, because 'cause they're just not being talked about in the mainstream media at all. Liberty is a great solution if you really embrace it. But
Mhm.
one other, you did mention that the Wisconsin Family Action endorsement, and congratulations on that, because I've been
Thank
following them for a while now, and I love their work. How much momentum comes out of an endorsement like that?
I think they're always helpful. I think that one was really important to me because I'm a former member of their board, and in the past when I worked at Focus on the Family with Doctor Adoption, we worked with Wisconsin Family Action and Council.
Nice.
And so to be able to kind of come full circle is important to me, but also pro life Wisconsin Victory Fund PAC endorsing as someone who has stood for life for decades and has advocated for protections for the unborn. Uh, it's important to me. But I also think
Yeah.
it helps with the voter to understand where my heart is on these issues. It also helps when I say I used to work for Dr. Dobson. A lot of people that immediately tells them where my heart is when it comes to these issues and the pro family issues. But these type of endorsements help because a lot of people know who these two groups are. And so when you
Yes.
say I've been endorsed by, even at the fair booth, it happened a few times where they're like, oh, okay, it tells me where you're at. Yeah, I lead with those endorsements and it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It just shows you're aligned with the kinds of groups that other people are aligned with. And yeah, so I could see that being a good way to just kind of break the ice with people who might not know you personally yet.
Hmm. It helps introduce me to the voters.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, sir, I know you want to go get some dinner before you have to go to that meeting. What else should the audience know before I let you get out of here? What's a great way for them to reach out to you?
DavidVarnam.com is my website, and it's Varnam as in victory, V as in victory. Uh, Arnam is how you spell my last name. I also have a Facebook. You can find me at David C. Varnam and on X at D Varnam. Lots of ways to find out, connect with me, learn more about me. And we post quite often on social media. So if you want to see what I'm up to and the many miles that I put on my car every week, we're over 55,000 miles since I got into the race in late September. And
Wow.
for those that have kind of followed along a little bit, I'm on my third car of the campaign because of
Oh
things that
no.
have broken. And on January 30th, I bought a new used car that had 19,000 miles, and I just had tires put on my car last week, and I had crossed over 55,000 miles since I had bought that car in January. And mind you, not every single mile is a campaign mile, but most of them are, and that's a lot. And we'll probably hit 60,000 here in the next week or two. But
Yeah.
we continue to put the miles on over 55,000 miles. When I ran in 2022, I did 58,000 total, and we're definitely going to surpass that, pushing across the state. But that's how you get out there, and that's how you meet people. And I'm going to
Yeah.
continue to work hard. And if people want to learn more about me or send a donation along or sign up for emails, my website, davidvarnam.com, is the best place to go for that.
Yeah, everyone out there listening and watching this podcast, please head over there and check out his website and send him a few bucks for gas money. Because, man, oh man, 60,000 miles. Oh, 3 cars. That's amazing. Oh, you know what? You mentioned all of your social media. God bless you for doing that. I love following like where you're at on the trail. What was it the other day? You were having a good piece of chicken or a good chicken dinner or something. So
Yeah.
keep up the great work, man.
Yeah. It was in Marquette County, and they had all these half chickens up on open flames with charcoal underneath. They had cinder blocks, and it was just amazing how big the grill was. And they were flipping them in these big metal containers, and it was great.
Nice.
Delicious
Now I'm
chicken.
hungry. Well, great talking to you, sir. God bless you. Good
You
luck with
too.
the campaign, and stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much for having me on.
I want you